If you are receiving this message, this is not a drill. I am in fact on holiday. Hi guys, it's Leanne. I hope that when you are watching this video, you are enjoying it as much as I am currently enjoying, hopefully, lounging by the pool in the sunshine, reading a huge stack of books. Because I love you guys so much, I have pre-filmed a couple of book hauls for you. This first one will be the return of Crime Corner, my segment where I talk all about crime and thrillers and mysteries and dead bodies, and there's some true crime in there and just all the stabby stuff. And then part 2 is going to be pretty much everything else. I've got a decent mixture as usual in my part 2. And some of these books I was lucky enough to receive for my birthday. My birthday was on the 4th of March. I have still got my cards up behind me because I like to receive post. So without any further ado, let's get into the books. The first book that I've got to show you is actually a little bit outside of my comfort zone. It was actually a birthday present from my lovely wife Helen. This is one of her favourite series ever. She actually painstakingly read the physical books before the audiobooks were available. For those of you who don't know, my wife has pretty bad dyslexia and she listens to all of her books on audiobooks or I read them aloud to her. So this was a series that she was so obsessed with that she actually read the physical copies. And I have now got her physical copies on my bookshelf. You guys might have spotted them a few times and wondered, I haven't seen Leanne talking about that series before. And that is the Andy McNab Nick Stone series. So in Helen's collection we did not have the first one. We don't know what has happened to it. Maybe fell apart from abuse and rereading. But this is Remote Control and it is the first book, and I think this series is like 22 books long, and it's the first thriller sort of series. I guess it's kind of got one foot in adventure novel. I'll just tell you what it's about. So this is about Nick Stone. He was an SAS trooper, and after a particularly disastrous mission, he is pretty unceremoniously let go and used as a scapegoat. Subsequently, he is trying to find something to do with his very specific set of skills, and it turns out that the British intelligence services would quite like to borrow him as a deniable operator, meaning they will put him in situations, and if things go very wrong, as I'm led to believe they do often in these books, they will just deny that he exists or that he was working under their orders. The reason I say that this one's a bit outside of my comfort zone is because I don't usually go for anything that's down the sort of spy or government agency route. It's just big conspiracy theories are just not my jam. But as with my attempt at reading Matthew Riley last month, I would really like a series that just reads kind of like a blockbuster. I want explosions and capers and things that read like a screenplay, but I don't want Matthew Riley's level of nonsense and things that just don't work in plot holes. So Helen tells me that Andy McNab is not like that, and I am going to read this one and I will report back. The next book is one that I am giving a shot based solely on the recommendation from the wonderful Emma from Drinking by My Shelf and also Pan Macmillan's channel Book Break. So this one is The Temp by Michelle Francis, and it kind of plays with a trope that I really quite like. It's about Carrie, who is a very successful TV producer, and she has a husband and a happy life, and she gets pregnant, and while she is pregnant she needs somebody to take over from her on maternity leave. Now let's be perfectly real here guys, between you and Leanne. When we go on holiday from our jobs, or we go on maternity leave or long-term leave of any kind, we hope that the temp who fills in for us is absolutely shit at our job. We want that person to be abysmally terrible so that we can breeze back in and be like, don't worry, I'll fix it all. I know how to do my job. And then you get a little worn out spot on your head from your boss going, pat, 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 you did a good job, yes. Unfortunately, Carrie does not find that her situation turns out quite like this, and the temp that takes over from her is marvellous. She's wonderful. Everybody loves her, including her husband and her family and her friends. And suddenly Carrie is realising that there's maybe a little less room for Carrie in Carrie's life than Carrie would like. The next one that I've got also kind of plays with a trope that I really, really like, and that's the sort of evil child trope. This is The Perfect Child by Lucinda Berry, and it is about a couple who are very settled in their lives and very comfortable, as I believe the husband is a surgeon and the wife is a nurse, and they've kind of caught everybody's attention as that couple who you really wish good things for because they're so nice, but it turns out that they can't actually naturally have children, and this is very painful for them. And then one day the husband takes on a case of a young girl, I think she's about 6, and he forms a great bond with her and brings her home. But when Janie comes home, she bonds really, really, really well with Christopher and not so much with Hannah. And she kind of ends up persecuting Hannah in her own home. Now, I have very recently picked up a book along those lines, Bad Apple by Soji Stage, and I hated it. I hated it so much. It was so boring and badly written. So I'm pulling for The Perfect Child. I want it to be better. Please, can it be better? There needs to be more evil children trope books. The next one that I've got is one that I picked up on an absolute whim. I hadn't heard anybody talk about it, and I spotted it and thought, that sounds great. This is You Let Me In by Lucy Clark. Now, Lucy Clark has 5, I think this is her 5th novel that's out, and I haven't picked up anything else from her before, although I have seen her books on shelves, so it's gonna be a fun adventure. I don't really think I've heard anybody talk about her. This one is about Elle, and she has recently rented out her clifftop home, and she has now moved back in, but since she rented it out, nothing quite feels right. I think the back of the book says that there is a weird shift in the atmosphere, and I really like that description. She just feels like it's not hers anymore. Then she starts to see shadows and hear footsteps, and she is convincing herself that it's all in her head, because it turns out Elle has reason to be paranoid, because Elle is not exactly clean when it comes to her past and her past actions. This one sounds great. I also love home invasion-y things. I mean, if I go for horror, if I was to list my favourite genres of horror, home invasion and just Hush. Hush would be my favourite genre of horror. So this one appeals to me big time. The next one that I've got here is actually a true crime, and it's one that I swithered on picking up, if I'm perfectly honest. This is Parkland by Dave Cullen. Dave Cullen obviously very famously wrote Columbine, which is sort of thought to be the definitive book on that tragedy. And I'm not a huge fan of his writing. His reporting was wonderful. This book is phenomenal in terms of the information that it provides, but in terms of Dave's actual writing, it's just not for me. And so when Parkland came out, I was a little bit, should I do another really long book from Dave Cullen? But I am so interested in the movement that happened around Parkland that I couldn't not pick it up in the end. Parkland was, of course, a very recent school shooting, and as a result of it, a huge movement sprung up which had marches on Washington and various other things in the US about gun control, and it was primarily teenagers who just did not want to see themselves and their fellow students be constantly put in jeopardy because politicians in the US refuse to tighten laws on gun control. So I'm very, very interested in this one. I was also interested to read, when I picked this one up, that the reason that it's taken Dave Cullen so long to put out any other books, because he has been working about a book about Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the military for quite a while, which is I think now coming out next year, and it turns out that he had secondary PTSD after writing Columbine, so It's interesting to me that after that horrendous experience, he has then essentially replicated his experience of reporting really in depth from survivors' points of view about another horrendous tragedy. The next book that I have got is a thriller that I have had pre-ordered for an embarrassingly long time, and that is The Taking of Annie Thorn by C.J. Tudor, who of course wrote the smash hit The Chalkman. And true to form, the publishers have made this book absolutely stunning. If you remember The Chalkman, it had little chalk drawings on the spine, and this one has little paper dolls, and that's the end papers as well, and I just mean it's so creepy and I just love it so much. So this one is about Annie Thorn, or more specifically it's about her sister, who is telling the story of what happened to Annie. When they were kids, Annie went missing for several days and she returned and would say nothing about what happened to her, but her sister knew that something bad had happened because she just wasn't her Annie anymore. She wasn't the same person, she didn't act the same, she didn't talk the same. Are we seeing little hints of Whistle in the Dark by Emma Healy here with the whole disappeared and returned and wouldn't say why thing? I am so hoping that this one is better, but I have more faith in C.J. Tudor. Salty, everything is so salty, my face is going to be like... I'm telling you, in a couple of years, if I get any kind of fillers or Botox, it's because I've been a bitch about so many books on the internet. Anyway, Annie's sister then, years and years and years later, receives an anonymous email in her inbox which says, "I know what happened to your sister because it's happening again." Need I say more? Oh, the next one that I picked up I'm so excited about, and it's actually also the fault of Emma. If you like my channel and my recommendations, I think you'll like Emma. So I have picked up The Rumour by Leslie Cara, and this is so interesting because two things in this really caught my attention. This is about a very small town and a rumour that starts at the school gates. Mums are picking up their kids, and as apparently mums are known for doing a lot of gossip at the school gates, one day one of these mums hears that a notorious child killer is living in their quiet little seaside community. So Sally McGowan, 40 odd years earlier, stabbed a 10-year-old boy to death when she was also very young herself. The rumour was of course the first thing that caught my attention because I love books like that. I love when a thriller hangs on Chinese whispers, and it's not that people aren't telling each other what's going on, because that's just lazy and bad writing. It's that they are telling each other, but they're only telling them the bit that they heard or the bit that they want to know or the bit that's important to them, and by the end it gets all twisted. So I'm really excited for that bit. But the second part, I mean, it put me in mind of The Sleep of Reason by David James Smith, which of course is about the James Bulger murder, which I've talked about a lot recently, reading that series of books, and I am interested to find out where this book goes. Okay, I'm gonna say another controversial thing because apparently I don't say enough of those kinds of things on the internet. I then picked up The Hospital by Barbara O'Hare. Now, looking at this cover, this is not the kind of book that I usually pick up. And you guys know exactly what I mean. Let's not play. The books that I'm talking about are the true crime memoir abuse stories, which generally feature young girls in poses like this where they're staring sort of gloomily far away at a camera, and it's usually like my childhood abuse or the things that I survived. Now don't get me wrong, I am not invalidating these mostly women, but some men as well, stories at all. I'm not saying that I don't believe them or that they don't have the right to tell them. I absolutely do think that it's their right to get their side of all of these horrible things that happen to them out into the world, and that it can be very cathartic for them. What I am saying is that I don't read them, because to me, people who have been through a lot of these experiences are often not people who would traditionally write books, or they work with ghostwriters, and so they're usually quite poorly written. They're usually full of things for shock value, and I find them in pretty poor taste sometimes, because I often feel like I am exploiting the person that I'm reading about. So now, after that little rant, the reason that I picked up this one is because I'm very interested in the case that this story specifically comes from, and that is about Ashton Hall. So Ashton Hall was a hospital in Derbyshire in the UK that was run between the 60s and the 70s, and they were there for kids who had behavioural issues and learning difficulties, and lots of kids who had things like Down syndrome and other unexplained and undiagnosed mental health conditions, and they were sent there as a sort of last resort, and the staff there were in the process of systematically abusing their charges and had been for a long time. And a lot of it wasn't just sexual abuse, it was also experiments with mind-altering drugs. It was also deprivation experiments to see what would happen if they left them overnight, you know, in a dark room with no contact with anybody and things like that. And of course, as young children, that was incredibly traumatizing. And I've heard quite a lot about this fairly not much talked about case. I don't really hear a lot about it in the media, but I feel like I saw a documentary or something about it a few years ago, and it just piqued my interest. So when I saw this one, I was like, do you know what, I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to give it a go. The next one that I've got here is actually a YA book, and some people are calling it contemporary YA and other people are calling it sort of contemporary mystery, but I'm putting it more in the contemporary YA thriller genre. Or rather, what I'm saying is that it should be in that genre from the subject matter, because this is The Burning by Laura Bates. You guys will probably already be familiar with Laura Bates because she is much talked about on BookTube, and for good reason. She wrote, among other things, Everyday Sexism, which is basically like a feminism primer that I would recommend you to give to your teenagers especially, but any kids sort of like from 12 up. So I was delighted when I discovered that Laura Bates had brought out a novel, and I was even more delighted when I discovered what the subject matter was, because it's so interesting to me. This is about Anna, and the back of the book says, new school, tick, new town, tick, new surname, tick, social media profiles, erased. Because in her last town, Anna made the terrible mistake of sending a naked selfie to what I think was her boyfriend at the time, and it went crazy. The selfie went viral. She was absolutely persecuted because of it, and her entire family had to up sticks and move. And I just, as somebody who did not have social media growing up, it is endlessly interesting to me how people manage to come out as whole individuals at the end of high school with social media and with the constant threat of people being able to be in your safe place. Now I have a couple of upcoming releases to show you, and I'm giving you this one a little bit sneakily early. I usually wouldn't talk about a novel that is this far in the future of coming out, but I'm super excited for it. Though I'ma tell you, because I'm probably not going to be able to wait until July to read it, which is when it comes out. 4 months. Do I look like I have 4 months worth of staying power in me? So this is A Nearly Normal Family by M.T. Edwardson, and it is his first book published in English. So I think from that implication, although it doesn't say anywhere in here, I think that he has had other books published in Swedish. So this one is described as crime, but it sounds more thrillery because it doesn't sound like it's coming from a detective's perspective. So I wonder if maybe in Sweden, I don't know, but I wonder if the thriller genre isn't as big and so everything is lumped into crime. I find that with some internationally translated books, especially French. But anyhow, this one is about a family, and it is from 3 different perspectives. So I'm just going to read you the really sparing bit on the back because it dragged me in. So the father believes his daughter has been framed. The mother believes she is hiding something, and the daughter believes they have no idea what she's truly capable of. So in this one, the daughter has been accused of murder, and I guess the real question is, if that happened to you, would you stand beside your daughter regardless, or would you stand on the side of like right and justice? So I'm excited for this one. I've read the first couple of pages, as I tend to do with everything that comes into my house. And they made me very impressed and very enthused. So yeah, I'll probably not wait till July or even June to read this one. I'm breaking my own rule about telling you about things too far in advance, but I can't help it. I have no self-control, bitch. The next proof that I've got is just, it's super, super fun. When I got it in the post, I was just like, I'm so glad that they contacted me about this one. This is The Chemical Detective by Fiona Erskine. Is that not the best proof cover you have ever seen? This is the start of a series by a Scottish author, which admittedly I don't read very much of. I don't read very much in the Scottish crime genre. A lot of it tends to be either really hard crime with detectives, or it tends to be historical crime, and I'm not into either of those two genres. So I haven't dipped my toe very much, but this one is a little bit different because it is about a character who is an explosives expert, and her services are sought all around the world. Now, Fiona Erskine is actually an engineer, and she has worked all around the world. She's worked in Russia and China and many other places, and she's frequently been used to being the only female on site at a lot of these places, and she's, you know, used to having to assert herself in a very male dominated industry. And so I love the fact that she's chosen to use her experience to write a thriller. Just makes me so happy. So Fiona's character, Jack Silver, is in Slovenia, and she's working on an avalanche control case with controlled explosives, and she notices an irregularity in some of the paperwork coming in from one of the chemical suppliers. And as soon as she raises any kind of complaint, she's kicked off of the site, and she's subsequently fired and made to look like not a credible person. And she is not taking that lying down, so she decides that she is going to get behind exactly what has gone on and why she has been used as a scapegoat. And the final one is another one for me, which is just a little bit out of my normal comfort zone, but I have seen it everywhere, and the more I hear about it, the more intrigued I am, which is an odd thing. Usually when I see a book everywhere, the more turned off I am by it, and the more I avoid it. But Tangerine managed to slip through my no hype barrier. So the synopsis of Tangerine by Kristen Mangan really is giving me Rebecca vibes, in that sort of, you know, something really awful is going on but you can't quite put your finger on it, and the place is as atmospheric and as much of a character as the actual characters are. So Alice has moved to Tangier in what I believe is the 1950s. I mean, it looks very 50s. And she is very surprised that when she and her husband turn up at the start of their new lives there, she finds her old best friend Lucy already there and hoping to make amends for something horrendous that happened several years ago back at home in the UK. Or at least I think it's the UK. That's maybe an assumption. Don't take my word for that. Anyway, Alice thinks that she should be happy. She has a new life, and her friend Lucy is helping her to expand her horizons. Usually Alice wouldn't go out to the bazaars and the other things that make up Moroccan culture all on her own, and Lucy is more than happy to guide her along. This is one of those occasions where I wish that I was an owl and I could do the whole like 360 head turn bitch please look. Because just as soon as Alice starts to figure out that maybe something not okay is going on here, maybe Lucy is up to something which isn't necessarily in her best interests, her husband goes missing and she is left alone in a sea of confusion to try and piece together exactly what has happened. So that is everything for my Crime Corner haul. I hope that something caught your eye, but please let me know if you have read any of the books that I've showed you, or if you are looking forward to any of them coming out. I will be back very soon with the second part of this haul, and I will speak to you all very soon. Bye! And do not expect me to have a tan, because vitiligo don't tan, bitch. I just look like a hot dog that's been left on a grill for very too many minutes. Very too many minutes. It's factor 500 for me.